Hello Internet, I'm the Disney Brain, and love triangles suck, especially on Disney Channel, who've been proudly parading such insults to geometry in our face for years now. And, through the lens of Liv and Maddie as well as Girl Meets World, I'll talk about why. It bears noting that things may get heated here, and this will in no way be a completely objective discussion. It also bears noting that this video is not, I repeat, not a means to crucify any of you who actually love triangles. But it's high time to engage in a more complete look into this particular trope. The reason I chose these two shows is because, for one thing, I've seen every episode of these two shows, and the fact that one is about two guys and a girl, and the other is about two girls and a guy, makes for a more complete, better discussion. Let's start with Girl Meets World because, Lord Almighty, I'll need to warm up before we tackle the other one. Over the course of the show, arguably since the very beginning, both Maya and Riley developed feelings for Lucas. Why Lucas? Because he's a large, tall, prototypically handsome jock that could have easily fit just as well into this movie. The first problem here is that this triangle knows it's a triangle, and nothing on that end ever gets resolved until 2 seasons later. It's absurd. Meanwhile, Riley and Maya are bouncing around between one of them trying to be with Lucas and the other trying to be with Lucas, and Lucas being somewhat aloof to what's going on. It quickly became the worst part of the show. Meanwhile, the two most socially awkward characters in the show have the best depicted relationship of the series, even more so than Cory and Topanga if you don't come into Girl Meets World with an understanding of how they ended up married. And then, when the love triangle does get resolved, it's this completely contrived scenario where Maya was becoming Riley, so then she liked Lucas more, despite them having plenty of chemistry before now, and Riley seeming way less interested, and this is a total mess. All of that my moment garbly-gook that Lucas prattled on about in season 1 ended up not meaning a damn thing, because at no point does he ever have any real say. He says he chooses Riley, but in reality, Maya was stepping out of the way again because of the previously mentioned contrived scenario. He was really just choosing the best available option since Smackle is spoken for, and that's not the way good relationships start. Speaking of bad relationships, when Lucas and Riley become official, the show did absolutely nothing with it. Their interactions and overall chemistry never ever changed. It's almost as if the love triangle never really happened and none of it was ever important. How about that? But then, why did the show force it down our throats? Because that's what it thought would sell. Let's heavily imply that it's okay to start this inane fan war about this ship or that ship because it makes the show more discussion worthy, but not better. Maya's growth and complexity made the show better. Smackle and Farkle changing themselves and each other made the show better. Mr. Matthews' lessons, when done right, made the show better. The love triangle consistently made the show worse and was responsible for some of the all-time worst episodes. And then, on top of that, the show didn't even have the balls to follow through and make the Riley-Lucas relationship mean anything. So, Lucas and Riley could go on a date in season 1, but not when they're actually dating in season 3? Nah, cause that would just be way too wacky. To say nothing of the other love triangle the show created out of thin air back when Creepmaster Charlie was still lurking around. Alright, now that I'm warmed up, let's shift our focus to Liv and Maddie before going more broad. I don't like to use the word hate very often, even though an alarming amount of you, for whatever reason, assume that I hate Cory Baxter just because his show is awful. In reality, I don't really give a crap about Cory other than the fact that he's easy to make fun of, in large part because he's a meme. I think the meaning of love and hate is way too generally thrown around and loses its meaning because of that. So, before we go any further, allow me to clarify something. I don't hate the Girl Meets World love triangle. I was simply heavily annoyed by it. But this triangle? This triangle? I can honestly say, without hesitation, that I absolutely, positively, unequivocally, with every fiber of my being, hate it. So much so that it burned me to the core just thinking about it, even before they officially created the love triangle. Firstly, this is the part of the analysis where I won't even pretend to be objective. I love Maddie Rooney. We've established that constantly. She is far and away the best character I've ever seen on Disney Channel by an absurdly wide margin. It's not that she's perfect, although an argument could be made, but anyways, it's that everything she says, every layer that gets peeled back, and everything she goes through only makes her more endearing to me. Even with that damn shoe episode that completely botched her character, I directed every bit of my ire towards the writers and never her. it got to a point where she could easily get away with doing and saying things that I would at least somewhat criticize other Disney characters for. For all of those reasons and more, my opinion is biased to the high heavens. Honestly, I never expected to feel this way, but then there I was channel flipping one day, and all of a sudden, bam what, straight to the heart. That's where I'm coming from. So, when I tell you that I loathed, despised, dreaded, absolutely hated, and reviled everything that is the Josh Dickey confrontation, you know you can take my word for it, if my tone of voice wasn't evidence enough on its own. Whew. Alright, now let's break this thing down. And if you happen to like Josh, run for cover now. Josh Wilcox is a terrible character, and the man behind him is a terrible actor. The funniest thing about him, which is to say the only funny thing about him, is that someone like him is actually an actor in the context of the show. His delivery is stiff and uninspired, his lines are mostly boring and nonsensical, and his out-of-nowhere crush used exclusively to make him a combatant for Maddie's affection makes him a bigger personal attack against me than even that dumb talking dog show. The man's first sentence to Maddie was to lie about his intentions. Now that's what I call a great lesson. Kids, take notes. And then he essentially force fits himself into the narrative because Liv, of all people, is his primary source of encouragement. Never mind the fact that Maddie got out of a fairly lengthy relationship with a heartbreaking ending at the very beginning of the season. Never mind the fact that Maddie said more than once that she wasn't ready to jump back into another relationship so soon. Never mind the fact that as her twin, you saw all of these events firsthand but don't seem to give a crap. And never mind the fact that you yourself, Liv Rooney, told Holden that you weren't ready for a relationship because of how it would make other people feel. So, in perfect accordance with your own advice, you push Josh onto Maddie despite the way she feels. This is beyond hypocritical. This is pure, unadulterated treason. And we haven't even talked about Dickey Smalls yet. But, in an effort to not open up old wounds, I'll keep things simple. He done goofed, several times in fact, but at the very least, his relationship with Maddie was patiently built up to, since it was established in the very first episode that Maddie had feelings for him. And then, it took them several more episodes to even admit that they were together after they started dating. So why did they rush things with Josh? Because love triangle, and everything that goes with it. Now, I sounded pretty civil about it in my review for Choose a Rooney, but now the gloves are coming off. Cover your ears, kids, because you're about to hear some things that might age restrict me. You've been warned. Why the fuck was there a damn vote on who Maddie should be with? Who the hell greenlit this bullshit? No, seriously, I need a name. This is as flat out manipulative as anything the undead garbage that is Twilight brought with it. These guys disgustingly encourage ship warfare, publicly celebrating it like, yes, Maddie's in emotional turmoil right now because two guys she cares about both want her, but don't focus on that because that's too depressing. Instead, get in on the action. Hurry, hurry, come one, come all. Place your bets here, place your bets now, folks, like it's a goddamn motherfucking horse race. And I get that this vote had nothing to do with who Maddie ended up with, but in a way, it kind of did, because in that episode, Ari talks about how the universe shouldn't have a say in this, and then what the universe wanted, in this case Josh for some inexplicable reason, didn't happen. So there's a reason to believe that either they filmed two different episodes, not very likely, or that the voting never mattered, which is even more manipulative. And since this show convinced everyone that she just had to choose one of them, because obviously one of the most independent and self-sufficient female characters on the network absolutely needs to be defined by, oh my god, like, who is she saying right now? Disgraceful. No weight was ever given to the more obvious third choice of, oh, I don't know, choosing yourself, which would be completely in character for Maddie to do. That's not weird, that's not unhealthy, that's not unprecedented, that's preferred. Alex Russo took charge of a similar situation. Are we really gonna sit here and say Maddie, of all people, couldn't have taken charge of hers? Especially since Josh was essentially force-fitted into her life, and now her old flame is basically force-fitting himself into this mess, just because he feels like his territory is being threatened or something. Oh god, this is just pissing me off. And once again, Liv is just letting all of this nonsense happen. Oh, Diggy, no, please don't leave. I know Maddie's in a relationship that I forced upon her, and I know the vote isn't going your way, but you can still win. Win. Fucking win. Like she's a goddamn trophy to put in your goddamn trophy case to say, ha! beat your ass, didn't I, Joshy boy? And that's the main problem I have with ship warfare. Either side is only ever focused on winning, and almost no attention is paid to what's best for the characters. If you are someone who likes love triangles and does put some thought into it, then you're doing it right. But far too many people just tweet out a hashtag that combines two people's names and calls it a damn day. And need I remind you, the minds behind the show encourage that? They did a lot of things right with this show. This wasn't one of them. It's a terrible message for girls. It might be a worse message for the handful of boys watching this, and all in all, it helps no one. But then, just like Girl Meets World, they compounded the issue by making the entire thing meaningless retroactively, because when the season 3 finale kicked in, Maddie never even got to say, oh, by the way, moving to Cali, sorry, we're long distance now. They could have made a pretty good finale about the fact that Maddie moving is similar to the multiple times that Diggy moved, but this time, since we assume they learned something from those other times, they'll actually try harder to make it work. But then, Diggy appears in maybe 2 episodes after the fact. They could have avoided the whole Josh Maddie side story altogether by making the easiest change, canning it. Get rid of it and instead make it so Diggy comes back early because he cares about Maddie and not because he cares about winning Maddie back. See the difference? Then allow them to work through the mistrust Maddie has for Diggy's words because of their history. Maybe they get back together and maybe they don't. Either way, both characters grow. But instead, they just had to throw in a love triangle. Why? Because that's what the people want to see, depressingly enough. Or at least, that's what they think they want to see. I'd go so far as to say that they saw all of the Girl Meets World fandom up in arms about who Lucas was going to be with and decided, hey, we need some of them triangle ratings. All this said, I don't hate this love triangle because of the characters themselves. The two men in question being awful in their own unique ways just adds to it. No, I hate it because, just like Girl Meets World, it places the person in the center of the triangle in the background. Nothing about how this triangle was established makes any sense by the show's internal logic. Nothing Maddie thinks or feels seems to matter because Liv never once listens to her and makes a mess out of the whole damn thing. None of the characters grow meaningfully from the experience because Choose-A-Rooney is actually pretty dull beyond the voting nonsense, not to mention that when it's all said and done, Josh chose for her. Like I even need to explain why that subtext is gross. That's the real message here, people. You girls just hang back and let your sister and the boys come to terms with who you should be with. But on a personal level, I hate it because it was done to Maddie. So in a way, it feels like it was done to me. Almost like a handmade buffet of things that would piss me, and specifically me, off. Alright, rant over, you can unhide your kids now. All in all, love triangles suck, but love triangles sell. Even I have to admit that my Choose-A-Rooney review ended up being one of my most viewed Liv and Maddie videos. Here's the problem though, I'm sure that there are plenty of love triangles on other networks that make the concept almost worth it. The kind of three-way conflict that allows the characters to grow, uncover new avenues of their personality, and even come to novel understandings. I'm positive that there exists a show where two girls or two guys fighting for one individual isn't handled so sloppily or dragged on so needlessly. And if you know of such a show, throw it in the comments because I probably haven't heard of it yet. But for the most part, it's not an interesting way to develop characters. It's not used as a means for understanding those same characters. And it's certainly not meant as a way for fans to calmly discuss the merits of one relationship versus another. It's a war. It's a battleground. It's ratings, and most shows want it that way. Otherwise, they would have actually put some effort into making any of this worth it. People will watch, people will project themselves onto the situation, and people will choose. Now, you may argue, but Disney Brain, you just don't understand the ship culture. To which I reply, you're absolutely right. I don't get it. Not one bit. I don't hate the idea, as I've explained, I just hate this one specifically. But also, I'm not at all above this sort of thing, and I would never even pretend to adopt a holier-than-thou stance on it. I titled my Choose-A-Rooney review, Josh v. Diggy. I titled my review for Girl Meets the New Year, Will Lucaya Finally Happen? My friends, I have sinned. I have sinned mightily, and for that, I feel great shame. Just like the shows themselves, I bought into this madness and maybe contributed to it for viewers, and I apologize to Maddie for not titling that old review Why Maddie Should Have Chosen Herself, amongst other possibly better titles. In conclusion, love triangles aren't plot points. They're plot traps, because the subtext is almost always slimy, and no matter what, someone is going to get hurt. Making a show more dramatic does not automatically make it better. It did when Liv's career was being threatened, but not when Dickie's chances were being threatened. It did when Maya was trying to find herself, but not when she decided against choosing herself for barely explainable reasons. But again, this isn't a criticism of the people that enjoy these triangles, it's a criticism of the baffling way they took over two shows, both of which could have done something much more inventive and interesting with their characters. Mainly because both shows prove their ability to do something inventive and interesting with their characters. For Girl Meets World, that's a standard, and the tail end of Liv and Maddie Season 4 gave us some of the all-time best episodes of the show. But when both dunked themselves headfirst into ship warfare, nothing good came of it in the context of those shows. But Girl Meets World was at least self-aware enough to laugh at themselves a little bit when their triangle became overplayed. I'm not asking for an end to ship culture. I'm asking for us to think about it more, especially considering how normal it is these days. So, you wanted Lucas and Maya together, okay? Why? So, you'd have preferred Josh and Maddie stick it out, alright? Why? I know I ranted a lot, you must have seen that coming, but let's really discuss this and see if there's more to it than I'm giving it credit for. And as always, thanks for watching.